to mute. There we go. Gosh. Right, now I think normal service has been resumed with any luck. Good evening, everyone. How are we all?
Good, thanks.
Oh, good, thanks.
Good, thanks.
Gradually sort of refining the technology around this. I moved it from Facebook to YouTube, and it seems to be really very much more sophisticated. And there we are. Whoops, there we are. We are live on YouTube as we speak. But 20 seconds.
I hear TikTok is the place to be. We can do some
Hey,
dancing.
listen. Not a chance in Hades. Well,
we can't be on TikTok because the Chinese would steal all our secrets.
They would. They'd pick our brains as we're sitting here.
That's
and
right.
Walmart is about to buy it with Microsoft or something like that. I just seeing, they've lost their chief executive today, and Walmart are in the process of looking to buy Walmart with Microsoft. It's very, very strange. Sam, Good evening to you. Sam is a new guest. And there he is. Hello, Sam. Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. Well, listen, we have got people listening, watching on YouTube, I believe. I think we've got 3 or 4 at the moment. So that's really good news. I've got to keep an eye on the waiting room as people look for admission to the Zoom. But let's start talking. I've got 2 thoughts this week, but my thoughts are relevant. It's whatever you want to raise. I'll just put them on the table. Number 1 is factories getting back to work and any issues around that. Hello, we've got Alec Anderson joining us. Issues around that. And also a subject that was raised in the manufacturing hour on Tuesday, which was reshoring and the dangers and opportunities around that subject. The dangers, to my mind, are that if you start assuming that everything should be made in the UK, then inefficiencies may creep in. Here's Ram. Inefficiencies may creep in, whereas I think manufacturing needs to go absolutely hell for leather towards the best possible efficiency, best service, best quality, and everything. Stephen, can I ask you possibly to comment on that? Have you considered this reshoring issue and what the implications are for UK manufacturing?
It takes me back a bit. When I first joined the Manufacturing Advisory Service, was that 2013? Reshoring was one of the big themes that we were asked to look at by government. It was a big initiative at the time, and it had been an initiative several times already at that point. So it keeps coming back. I think the key thing is looking at the economics of this. There will always be some products, some services that will need to be delivered by offshore entities, so whether that's China or Europe or wherever, simply because of the economics of that. So we shouldn't think that everything could be reshored. I mean, it's a fairly obvious point, isn't it? But having said that, to make reshoring work, reshoring back to the UK, quite a lot of criteria have to be met as well, not least the economic factors, but also just the sheer will, the sheer reorganization that's required for that, and all of the accreditation of companies and the management of the onboarding of suppliers. So it's not straightforward, but it is certainly welcome that the idea is coming back again.
I just think that people like myself, journalists, always talk in rather glib shorthand, and say, just reshore this, reshore that. Why not? I think it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of investment to make it happen. But there are very, very good examples of companies that do it. Do you remember the Trunky, the chap who made the Trunky,
yes.
the wheelie suitcase for kids?
Yeah,
Who was
they're
laughed out of court. Sorry?
They're based in, they're manufactured in Plymouth.
That's correct, yeah. They were laughed out of court by Dragon's Den, who promptly failed to see the funny side of it when he became very successful. But he had it made in China originally, and then he really dug into the nuts and bolts of the operation, discovered that actually he could have it made just as easily in Plymouth, and more importantly, could offer a much better service, because what it meant was, because he could set up a fully digitized manufacturing process, it meant that people could go online, choose the colors, choose the decorations, etc., etc. Click, pay, click, have it delivered. A fully servitized operation, and hardly any human interaction at all. There was very little at all. So, there are some great stories of that, and of course, stories as well, just about simple bits and pieces, components that may be made more cheaply here. But I think the high value, low volume is what we excel at. Is that not right? Has anybody got any thoughts on this? Mark, hello, good evening to you. What are your thoughts on this? You work with a lot of companies overseas.
I hate to be a dissenting voice, and I try to be positive. And I'm a great supporter of UK manufacturing, but I think what coronavirus has shown us is production has to be flexible. In the past 6 months, I've kept all of my customers supplied and very happy. In the background, production has moved out of China to Sri Lanka when China had the first round of coronavirus. It was then moved back from Sri Lanka to China. And to keep UK manufacturing going, our production has been moving all around the world to keep one step ahead of coronavirus. So if I was to apply coronavirus, I'd say you have to apply volume manufacturing to multiple places around the world. So high value, flexible manufacturing, perfect for the UK, but low value volume manufacturing, multiple sites around the world.
Do you think that it makes a difference if product personalization is one of the key factors? Are you still able to get product to customers quickly enough from those far-flung places?
No, I mean, my experience is talking about basically commodity product. I think personalization and localization go hand in hand. In my industry, one of the other reasons for multiple locations is actually to try and reduce transportation. So a lot of European product is, for example, made in Sri Lanka and made in Eastern Europe because it's closer to Europe than China. So reducing that transportation cost element. But yeah, I think there's a world of difference between the trunky example, which is a perfect one, and commodity production, which is my world for sensors mostly.
Yeah, Ram, hi. Good evening.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Steve. Steve's rather.
Hey,
Adam,
good
hi.
to see you, Ram.
Hello, everyone. So talking about the whole manufacturing thing, I mean, I'm kind of agreeing with what Mark just said. I'm also agreeing with what Steve said. I'm not sitting on the fence. I'll tell you why. One of the things we do as a company, Equitas Engineering, we're helping people move their low value, high numbers manufacturing from China to India due to the contacts we have in India. And talking about what Steve mentioned about personalization and individualization, the way you can do it is you can still do the personalization and individualization, but you just have them made and then the final assembly happens somewhere in Europe based on what people want and pick and choose. And I'm taking nothing away from British manufacturing. We've got fantastic manufacturing capabilities and the intellectual horsepower. It is just that the way, where exactly do we concentrate our efforts on is the high value, high technical input and the real value addition area of manufacturing, as opposed to, your 99p store or pound shop or Tesco products or COTS equipment, for example. That's what I think we should be focusing on as Britain, is the high value ones where there is a lot of technical input required, which has anyway been our strength, and lots of innovation required.
Yeah, I'd just like to welcome Alec and Fiona. We have a lovely double act. Hello, you guys. Alec, I welcome your comment on this subject. And Fiona, I don't know if you were listening at the time I said I wanted to talk perhaps later on about getting staff back to work and some of the challenges around that. And you would be absolutely brilliant to comment on that, because that is precisely up your street. But Alec, just if I may, on the subject of making overseas, just tell us quickly what you make and where you sell them, and what your views on the reshoring issue is.
Well, we have a joint venture in China, and also we are working with partners in India. And I think the unit costs is roughly the same, whether we make them in UK, China, or India. But the quality we make here is far superior. I think my observations of India and China would be they don't see the need for aesthetics or the value of aesthetics. It's very functional, and also trying to get them to understand the consistency and the quality requirements can be quite challenging. So we would happily manufacture here if we could, but unfortunately the financial system here still doesn't work for companies like us. So that's our challenge. In terms of sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, you just to be clear, you make machinery for the rice industry. Am I correct?
Yes. So we've moved into cereal now rather than rice. We do rice mainly, but yeah, we can mill other things as well. But we have a lot of potential orders right now, or interest, but we can't. We struggle to raise the finance to manufacture here. So the probability is we'll manufacture abroad, much to our regret. And this surprising thing that's been coming out for me lately is the ventilator challenge was an interesting opportunity for British engineering to show that it can flex very quickly. And yet we've got Airbus and Rolls-Royce and one of the local aerospace companies is not making tires for airplanes now. And I'm going, guys, you've got talent, you've got machinery, you've got space, you've got knowledge. Why does Airbus have to make planes? We've got thousands of rice machines that need making. So why do you have to be a car manufacturer? You're a manufacturer, or what if you can't make planes because nobody wants them? Make something that somebody wants.
I confess I do not understand, because I'm not an engineer, how adaptable production lines, machining, and so on are. But clearly, if companies all over the country have been able to switch from whatever they're doing into making PPE and, of course, the ventilators, that has to say that you're onto something there. You're right. If I'm a manufacturer, and among the things I make are aeroplanes and rice machines.
That'd be great. Wouldn't we have achieved something then?
Okay, Adam, good evening to you, and to Sarah, and to Angela. Hello, everybody. Helen, hello. Helen, I know you work overseas, but you're not sort of making things. You are making things, aren't you? You're making sort of electronic pieces for synthesizers and musical instruments. Am I correct?
Yeah. So yeah. Hi everybody. Just I'm doing more of a listening exercise. I'm not really accustomed to these kind of forums. Just to be clear, we're in Scarborough, North Yorkshire. So I just happen to on a different role. I work with North America quite a lot. Hence my sort of weird shift hours. But yeah, no, we design and manufacture electronic equipment for live music industry, for the events industry. Clearly, an interesting outlook for that industry at present. But also sort of high quality test instrumentation as well. Yeah, I mean, the whole manufacturing in the UK, we're doing it, we're vertical, we do everything. Clearly, some parts you have to get from overseas. The UK doesn't make electronic components anymore. We don't make affordable production prototype printed circuit boards anymore. It's way out of. For a small business, it's not possible not to use China, and that's just the reality. It would be nice, it would be fantastic if we could have our whole supply chain based in the UK. That would be ideal, but we don't make the silicon anymore, so we can't.
It's interesting.
So we do our best.
What's interesting is actually we're very good at making compound semiconductors. In fact, we're the world leader in compound semiconductors. But we're not very good at making the applications that flow from that. So everybody's smartphone contains several of these of chips made from these things, but the chips Some are fabricated in South Wales and elsewhere, but most of them are made overseas. Virtually everything of Huawei, the intellectual property is British. But
For
as
sure.
I say, it's
Yeah,
not...
no, we're awesome at design. We're awesome at innovation. You know, we just come up with the new ideas, the great stuff. But to the point about commodities and commoditization, you know, we can't make it at a price that people are prepared to pay for the finished good.
In this case, this company is effectively, to use the housing analogy, making the bricks, and they build the houses elsewhere. And of course, the houses are very much more valuable than the bricks. Sarah, good evening. Do you work with any manufacturers who are looking at this reshoring issue about maybe bringing some of their supply chain back home?
No, I've got another example though of very much a commodity manufacturing company that we've been working with, a wire assembly and harnessing company. So they have quite a lot of competition in the UK, but the majority of their competition from a price perspective has been coming from China. So they've been seeing more and more competition. And then the first 2 months into the COVID piece, suddenly their business went off the roof in terms of new orders, because, you know, they could hold their existing price, but, you know, get orders from, you know, companies like Dyson where they weren't, you know, seeing so much business because of the whole sort of reshoring initiative. So they've actually been a business that's gained from that perspective.
Will they hang on to that business, do you think?
Well, that was the first couple of months, but I spoke to the MD a couple of weeks ago, and some of that, yeah, I think their concerns are the next few months. So they are looking very seriously at marketing, which has not been a particularly great activity so far for them. And some of their other competitors in the UK are far smarter at doing that. So that's their big activity now in terms of the business development.
Angela, good evening. I didn't say hello to you when you came in. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm good, thank you, Nick.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this? I mean, you're in the business of reusing assets, so that implies that the assets are already in this country, and therefore overseas supply chains are not really part of your life. I may be entirely wrong with that supposition.
No, you're right. Yeah, you are right. Yeah, exactly. But I think it's quite interesting now to see how very pro a lot of manufacturers are for reshoring. I'm just hoping that we haven't left it too late. You know, we've
say that.
Well, we've seen such a massive decline in our manufacturing industry over the years. You know, I mean, coming from where I live in Sutton Coldfield, we had 3 major manufacturers here in Birmingham. We had Dunlop, we had IMI, and we had Lucas's, which were all major manufacturers, and there's just nothing left of them anymore, which is really sad because they were the 3 biggest employers in Birmingham. And I myself actually worked for Lucas's 33 years ago, I think it was. And I actually worked in the factory building circuit boards that go into the dashboards to tell you if your door's open and what have you. And I remember, and so that was 33 years ago, I remember them starting to move some of those processes across to Malaysia. And for me, I think that was the start of the decline. And I just really hope that we can pick back up again and start to really build our manufacturing infrastructure and show that we're a real power to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I think obviously that's something we'd all love to see, but it's rather like some of these conversations of which I've had, or which I've been instigated and been perhaps on the wrong side of the argument, say, wouldn't it be great if we could build ships again? Well, yes, but no. I mean, we're not necessarily into that big, heavy engineering anymore. What we're best at is all the brilliant components that make those ships very, very smart. Somebody else can sort of bash the metal and make the hulls and all that. And I suspect that's part of the transition that we're hoping to achieve. I just worry that there's not a lot of muscle left, or may not be a lot of muscle left after this crisis, because if companies do go under, and if in the comprehensive spending review, the Chancellor doesn't offer some kind of help to keep companies going. I mean, once a manufacturer's gone, that makes particularly specialist parts, you ain't going to get it back in a hurry. Sam, you're also down there in the southwest, I understand. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm down Cornwall way.
What's your take on this, and what are you sensing amongst your network at Connex Portal?
Yeah, so we're building a portal for smaller manufacturers, to be fair, at the minute, to actually generate some work for them to actually support these next troubling few months, wherever it may go. A lot of what I'm finding is that it's a mindset thing. There's people already in this kind of mind. Certain companies are in this mindset of, yeah, then they're going to struggle. Don't really know how to come out of it. But then when you speak to the right companies that are really positive, it is really nice to hear that they've pivoted, they've changed what they're offering. They're looking for alternative work or alternative forms of manufacture, if you like. So yeah, we're connecting smaller manufacturing businesses in the southwest with genuine leads and projects. I'm a mechanical engineer myself, so we're kind of offering that kind of almost hand-holding process with the individuals with project ideas, and then we're pushing them towards the manufacturers to maybe help them pivot and slightly alter what they're working on. And to be fair, I mean, I don't know how many of you are located in the southwest, but the feedback down here is actually quite positive, and I think it is almost bucking the trend, because there are so many small manufacturers down here that they're suddenly seeing loads more work come their way. It's just what happens in the next 18 months, 2 years time. Does everyone, once COVID has moved on, whatever may happen, does everyone just switch back to what they were used to, or do they continue using these local smaller companies? And that we don't know at the minute, but I'm sure we'll find out soon enough.
It'll be driven by the mighty pound, won't it? Because that ultimately will drive everything. Interesting what you said about some companies' mindsets. Reminds you of the conversation we had last week. Rob Marchant of Marchant Kane was saying precisely that. He's among a group of manufacturers, and some, when the crisis hit, they just fell completely off their perch. They just couldn't cope. Others were out there looking for new opportunities, but that's the way to describe a challenge, I always think, is to look at it as an opportunity rather than as a threat.
And you'll be remembered more for how you've helped and how you've adapted through this crisis. If you need kind of disappear off the face of the earth and then try and pop up again in 6 months' time, your work may have already gone to someone who was actually more helpful and active during the lockdown and stuff. So
here, Steve Murphy. Hello, good evening. You've managed to sort out your tech problems.
No, it's not tech. It's just a bit of trouble with my lad. That's all. I think we've got it sorted. No, there's a couple of things. One is when I've worked for other companies dealing with China. I'd never dealt with India, mainly China. To be quite honest, sorting any sort of technical difficulty has been a bit of a nightmare. And I understand from people who do it all the time that the best way to deal with China is to have a certain decent volume over there, and to have people actually on site, or at such a point that they cycle around your sites. And when you deal with them face to face, and you're there all the time to say, no, don't do that, do this, they are very good. But go away, and they sort of drop back into their old ways, and getting things done to a decent quality. I'll give you an example. We had a quality problem with one product, and it seemed to come at a distinctive time. So thinking we'd be brilliant analysts and say, look, what happened at this time? We sort of pointed out that it did seem a certain sort of cutoff, a point where this happened, at which point they told us that they'd moved the factory. So over one weekend, a short period of time, they shut the factory down because the factory was in the middle of town and the government paid them a huge amount of money to move out. And they moved all the equipment and everybody to this other site about 20 miles away. and put all the workers up in like porter cabins or something. And then I'm saying to them, well, why didn't you tell us about this? Oh no, it's still okay. It's still all to spec. Well, it had changed. Something had done, and then it was really hard to. So this is not one, it's quite a few. You know, I'd ask for somebody with some critical parameters and say, I'd like, you know, an inline SPC chart on this critical parameter. And oh, yeah. And then the next thing, they've sent you an attribute chart for just from some random place in the production line. We had professional translators and stuff, and it was happening all the time. But on the other hand, I've dealt with some small British companies who to many ways are just as bad in terms of they don't seem very flexible. We'd have trouble with scratched parts, and then we'd sort of look at them and say, oh well, blooming heck, look at that. No wonder it's all scratched. It's not wrapped in anything nice, and it's all stacked together. So I suppose I'm not too rosy-eyed about UK manufacturing either, but I'd like to support it. But what I'd say there is, if you actually have the right mindset in terms of serving the customer, delivering quality in every aspect, which often means the nitty-gritty horrible things as well as the high-tech things, I think there's a massive business for you. Because working with China, I've found to be hard work. So I think there's a niche there, but we can't be too rosy-eyed about it. Some people, it's just pulling out every nitty-gritty detail is just too much for them, and that they probably wouldn't be suppliers of choice.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome Roy to the table. Hello, Roy. We got a still picture of you. Are we going to see you in vision or? Hello.
Yeah.
There he is.
As soon as I work out the technology, I'm there. Hi, sorry I'm late.
It's not at all. It's a great pleasure to see you. And I'm just admitting somebody else who's coming in, hopefully. Yeah, Nick, good evening. Roy, great pleasure to see you. For those who don't know, Roy, you work in the aerospace section of Airbus. Is that correct, Roy?
Actually,
Space.
in the defence and space segment of Airbus.
Thank you. Very close to where I am. I'm on the south coast, and you're based in Portsmouth, which is
yes.
And I've been around the factory. It is perhaps one of the most exciting places I've seen to go in there and look at satellites being made. It's absolutely brilliant. But Airbus's name was being taken in vain earlier by Alec Anderson, who was wondering why they can't turn around and make rice machines as well as aeroplanes. Well, that's another story. I'll fill you in on it.
There's probably too much profit for us in rice machines, Alec, I think.
We're going to need rice machines in space, though, eventually, aren't we?
Well,
you may as well start soon.
Roy, Airbus's supply chains, of course, are legendary because that's the company is founded on parts being made in different countries. How worried are you at the moment about supply chain issues as we approach December the 31st?
So probably the best way to describe it is in monetary terms. And prior to COVID, our preparations for Brexit, not knowing what kind of Brexit it would be, we spent €1 billion stocking up on parts to provide some surety that we could continue working at the same rate that we were working. So it's an awful lot of money, but that €1 billion is supporting a €60 billion turnover per year pre-COVID. Now, the strange thing now is where the €1 billion had probably built us a 2 to 3 month buffer of stock. It now means that we've probably got more like a 4 to 5, maybe 6 month buffer of stock because the demand for the end product has dropped so much. So we're reasonably well insulated for 4, 5, 6 months. But of course, that's all working capital sitting on the shelf just to make sure that we can keep delivering.
Yeah. Nick Russell, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Tell us, we've been talking about the potential for reshoring some supply chain, the dangers and the opportunities that might exist in that. Forgive me for just throwing that on the table and asking if you have any interest in the subject at all and whether it has a bearing on your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So in fact, we've got a fairly recent example where we were approached by, of all things, a stairlift manufacturer. So they had a lithium-ion battery in their stairlift. They purchased it from China. They were having some issues which resulted in relatively high service costs. So we were able to go in, kind of re-engineer a slightly different solution. And although we weren't able to match the upfront procurement costs from a total cost of ownership perspective, it's worked out better for the customer. So they've shifted their production to our factory in Scotland now. So we're looking for other opportunities like that.
Can you just tell us your company name, Nick, please?
Yeah, sorry. So I'm chairman of two companies. So that company is Denshi Group, which is mostly defence lithium-ion battery manufacturer up on the north coast of Scotland, although we are kind of moving into some other sectors now. And also Prima Electronic Services, which is a fairly standard contract electronics manufacturer down in Cambridgeshire.
We were hearing before you joined us that nobody makes PCBs anymore, and actually I do know one company in Surrey that makes PCBs, but probably not to the price or volume that Helen needs them making. Is Helen with us? I can't see.
There are about 250 companies in the UK that still manufacture printed circuit board assemblers, and of those, the problem with the sector is that probably 30 of those companies are over 10, 15 million turnover, and the rest are all, fairly small, owner managed, not quite Fred in a shed, but, lacking ambition to scale really.
Anyway, has anybody got any further thoughts on this? Because I don't want to occupy the entire conversation around reshoring. Stephen, I wonder if I could just ask you if you could just sort of give us your thoughts on the conversation so far before we move on to the other issue I wanted to raise.
I think it shows from the diversity of different industries and different companies that we're connected with, either running or working with. It kind of horses for courses, isn't it, in terms of whether reshoring is a viable option. I think there should always be the ambition to do that. I mean, it's not just a nationalistic thing; it's a resilience thing. But diversity is at least as important, isn't it? So I've forgotten who it was who was mentioning that earlier on. So there's no simple solution. I think there has to be a real sort of heart-searching analysis of what's best. I think that there's a more fundamental issue, perhaps, that we haven't really touched on. Perhaps I'll sort of throw it in now, which is about the supply chain, not of suppliers and materials, but the supply chain of people. I've been out with 3 companies this week. In fact, wonderfully, for the first time in 6 months, actually on site with a manufacturing company. How cool is that? But they were all talking about struggles finding apprentices, particularly apprentices interested in using or developing digital skills in manufacturing. That old chestnut is still very relevant. So there are issues at home, can I suggest, that we would have to address before reshoring of supply chains to the UK actually becomes a really viable proposition. We don't have people coming through who can help us to develop, keep developing innovative technologies, then it's not going to be easy to make progress with reshoring.
That's an extremely good point. Yeah, because if people are panicking, wrong word, but if people are deeply concerned about the lack of engineers coming through the ranks in the coming years, particularly as you've got an older generation nearing retirement, do we have the capacity to take on the extra work that reshoring would involve. I think it's a subject we're going to be getting back to. I'd like to switch, if I may.
The question on that though is, does that stop us doing it? No, it shouldn't.
No,
Our optimism should always be driven, and it's a problem that we need to succeed, or a problem we need to get over. So what we don't want to be doing is putting barriers up, saying we can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. We bloody can do it. We can do it, and it's about sorting the problem out and understanding how we can do it. That's the key. It's that mind, coming back to that mindset thing as well. You know, just to add on, Nick, because I know you want to move on. From my side, on the TCM UK 3D printing side, I can remember us sourcing hot end parts from our designs and dealing with UK and also China. Now we went with China, not just about price, but it was about the attitude as well. When we gave them the design, it was on a fag packet sketch. China redid the drawing for us, contacted us within 72 hours, sent us a sample so we could see it within space of 3 days. The UK companies that we dealt with hadn't even looked at it after 2 weeks.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Absolutely. Sorry, we have exactly the same experience, and it's in fact, it's one of the reasons why we ended up acquiring the contract electronics manufacturer, because we would go out for quotes and the Chinese companies would give us the quotes back faster, offer a shorter lead time and a lower cost. The cost bit I get, but there's absolutely no excuse for British companies not to be able to turn quotes round within the lead time of a Chinese manufacturer. And you're absolutely right. It's about culture. It's about attitude.
It's also about, and Stephen, I'm sure would absolutely back me on this. It's also about actually adopting the technologies, the business and manufacturing technologies that allow you to turn quotes around in a heartbeat, to be that much swifter, more nimble, and not all the old stuff. Oh, we'll get back to you on that, and we'll, as you say, write it on the back of another fag packet. I mean, Stephen, this whole digitalization argument is about being ready, more flexible, more efficient, able to take on more work without necessarily having to go and look for more people to do it.
As on the particular point you're making there about the ability to turn around a quote, I mean, so much of that depends on having the data, having measured how much particular jobs actually cost, and having access to that information, being able to do the analytics on that. So it's about data rather than digital technologies. It's about the very fundamentals of the businesses that all of us are involved with in some way. We all need to make good decisions, and we all need good data. The digital technologies are another sort of enhancement on top of that, because when you have that good data, you can run efficient machines, optimized machines. So yes, there's most of the companies that I've been working with have needed some kind of help, and sometimes it's fundamental help, to get the basics of data technology right before they can move on with other stuff. I mean, these, admittedly, as you know, I work mainly with small and medium-sized companies. So the larger ones tend to have those systems, but they might be quite diverse, distributed across different departments of the business. So interesting challenges around using data, which you'd think would be the first thing that companies try to get right.
Okay, thank you. It's 6:39. I'd like to change the subject, if I may, because schools are going back, as we know, and a lot of companies are now going to be, obviously more people going back to work. I'd like to bring in Fiona Anderson, because Fiona deals very much on the people side of business, companies and manufacturers. And I'm wondering what challenges you're identifying, Fiona, as companies try to it's not just a health and safety thing, but about trying to merge these offsite and office-based staff again.
Absolutely. So I think we've got a few things facing us, and I'm really glad you mentioned about the schools coming back. But I think those who've been in and working in the business, wherever in the business they are, be working from home, are probably aiming towards burnout. And so we've got physical and mental health burnout, probably at very senior levels, exhausted people trying to figure out this conundrum now of how do we get people back into work? And I think you're talking about how do we attract people, the same old, how do we attract people into manufacturing and get them in? And it's very much about adopting the belief around our people grow our business. Our people out there have the answers. Ask them how they're going to keep the business going, how they can contribute, what's going to work for them, how do we move at pace, and what can we learn from that pivoting that we did? And even if the pivoting was to end up at home and we've got a laptop that works and I can communicate, great. But what can we learn? What are we doing differently we can now take back into our workplace that has worked really well? And actually, do we need to be in the workplace? Yes, a lot of manufacturing does, but the reality is, do we go back to the same old? But listen, I think just make sure that your exec team are robust, are not fit to collapse. It's not going to get any easier, and it's certainly going to be about people, and it's people who grow your business, both your customers and staff. Really get them on board, get your people coming up with the solutions for you to bring the customers back.
Yeah, I get that point. It's really what Adam was saying as well. It's about sort of, it's not just using this as a past experience, it's using it as a learning experience to shape the future, trying not to go back to the old normal, horrible word. But
Yes.
Hands up anybody who feels, having worked at home for a long period, okay, hands up those people who feel more energized, more engaged with their business as a result of having worked at home for the last 6 months. Right, hands up anybody who, okay,
One,
all right,
but
right. I'll
Nick?
put up half because I started this business in lockdown, so if you like, I'm kind of engaged, super engaged.
Can I just add a disclaimer, Nick, if it's okay?
Sorry?
Just a small disclaimer. I've been working from home over the last 4 years. So
Okay.
I don't know whether I'm still allowed a hand up or whether I keep my hand down. So,
All right. Now, anybody feel any sense of frustration, burnout, to use a phrase that Fiona used? Any sense that that they've suffered in any way at all from having been forced to work from home?
What I would add, Nick, is in saying that from the forums I have, because I have the manufacturing, the 3D printing, I've got the manufacturing consultancy side, but the Business Growth Academy, where it is solopreneurs and I'm helping solopreneurs and micro businesses across sectors, that's a different kettle of fish, because that has been very, very strong on mental health issues. So one of the biggest episodes in the Keeping It Business podcast that I've done over the 20 are the mental health ones. They're the ones that people have actually been going to, listening to. I did one on productivity and time management, particularly working with at home as well, and how to manage that in a few tools and techniques around managing that. That again had a lot of listens. So it is a very, very big thing. There's no two ways about it. I was having a discussion this morning with a lady that said, through the lockdown, you've been an absolute godsend in just talking and just having the forums that you're doing, just being able to talk to somebody. So working from home is not easy, because you've still got the aspects of ergonomics, of how you sit, how you're working. You still need the tribe around you. You still need to be feeling of talking with people and things like that. So there is a big, big thing in my eyes, this one.
I will confess to feeling quite, I don't know, I just feel quite exhausted at times, even though I think to myself, well, what actually have I done? Sorry, Angela, please.
Loss of time is the one for me. Dates. You don't know what date is, and things like that. That's the one that got me.
Angela, please.
I was just going to agree with Adam, really. I mean, I've worked from home on and off for, since 1999, to be quite honest. I think we were one of the first offices to go paperless when I was working in insurance. So I've had that experience for years. So for me, when lockdown came, it was just a piece of cake. I'm used to working from home. It's fine. But But I think one of the biggest things I hadn't realised, and I'm a really strong person. I'm a very, very strong person. You know, I'm the one that supports everybody else. But I've had meltdowns. I really have. And that's really unusual for me. And I think it's that loss of interaction with work colleagues. And I think as well, because it's been so critical for me to continue working through the lockdown, I haven't had a break. I haven't had any time off. Normally I'd have had a week away in Spain or 2 weeks away in Spain by now. I haven't. So I am absolutely exhausted. That's how I feel. So yeah, I fully agree. Yeah.
And these are the conversations we need to be having.
I do agree.
Sorry, Fiona, press on.
Yeah.
Want me to go on? Go on.
Yeah, Fiona, please continue.
Okay, sorry. These are the conversations we need to be having in the workplace. Absolutely.
I think from
Helen's broadband, I think, is
my perspective, because
Helen, I think you have broadband issues. We can't hear you. Okay. Fiona, sorry, you were going to say.
So I think these are the exact conversations we need to be having, because you said how many people are feeling engaged with the business was your question. Everybody went quiet. And actually, it's about being able to have these robust and open conversations and being very honest about the impact of working from home or going back into the workplace, because there's going to be both types of conversation needed. And it's not going to get any easier because the days are going to get darker. We haven't got the good weather to walk out into. So it's growing in complexity, I think, rather than going to get easier.
Roy Howarth, Airbus, is your plant in Portsmouth, has it been running fully open during all this?
No, so we've had an interesting way of working, because I've experienced both working in the office and working at home. We've only got around 25% of the normal population who are attending, and those are the people that have to be there to actually build the product. And then there's been a very small number of managers like myself and other staff supporting that physical manufacturing, and pretty much everybody else has been working from home. So the pattern I've been working, I've been a day at work and a day at home. So I've had the opportunity to compare the two, and it's very interesting. What I find is a little bit what Angela said. I find that working from home, I push myself harder. I work longer. I don't have the 40-minute commute either end of the day to have a think and mull over either what I'm going to do or what I've done during the day. You just get up, you have breakfast, you start work, and then you stop work and you're instantly at home, and there's no buffer time between the two. And I think that's something that makes me quite tired, because I think, bizarrely, driving 40 minutes is actually quite relaxing for me at the end of the day. And when you don't have that, it's quite tough. So I think the message for me is that it's a very different way of working from home. And what you've got to do is adapt your style of working. And there's no one size fits all. So everybody's got to find their own way. There's no magic formula. But everybody finds a different way of accommodating. The interesting thing is when I go into work, because there are so few people in work, I often sit there at lunchtime wondering why the hell I'm in work, because I can do everything on the phone. So, but in the end, I get a few occasional interactions with people, and that's really boosting in terms of energy. Just to have those little snaps of conversation with people here and there on site really help to boost you and keep you going. So it's how do we blend the two? And I think this idea of, you know, we need a work-life blend rather than a balance, and we've got to figure out exactly what that blend is. And it's something we're looking at as a business, that Maybe some people can work from home 100% or 95%. Maybe some people, you know, it's more like 50%. And we've got to figure out, and it's a little bit, you know, it's that thing that it's different for every individual. So you need an individual solution for every person. We have 1,000 people on site, so we need to figure out 1,000 solutions.
Yeah, it's like work-life balance. I don't look at it as a work-life balance. It's a work-life integration. So
Yeah.
it's how you work around that and get that in. It's the integration into it. So
Yeah.
the way I've always looked at it, I don't prescribe to the norm of working 8 till 5 and not working Saturday, Sunday. I fit my family in, and the work fits in around that. So I could be working midnight, but that's my decision. I've made that integration, that choice. The other things around, you were saying there around, I used to commute from where I am down to Droitwich, which was a 50 hour commute, sometimes 2.5 hours on the way back due to the traffic. My mindset was on the way there being set, and coming back was being reset for being family. What I do now working from home is I plan, which is the old Brian Tracy eat the frog scenario, is I plan tomorrow's work tonight. So I'm not doing it in the morning. It's all, and it's just things like that. So it's just that integration of how you do it.
Stephen, you had a point. You raised your hand, Stephen.
Yeah, just an observation. I think the thing about being in a factory or in an office is the sheer joy of banter. We had 3 different workshops this week with 3 different companies. I mentioned one of them was on site, which was an absolute joy, just getting out into the countryside. But even better, being with people and being able to josh with them, and just it's really, because you know, jokes are really quite hard to tell over Zoom, because you can't tell really any. It's hard to tell facial expressions if we're all in little tiles as we are. We were a bit concerned with the one factory that invited us to go down on site, because they make coffins. We did wonder if they're a little bit short of business, which is why they'd invited us onto site. We managed to get away with it, wearing masks the whole time. I just so loved being in a factory, mainly because I hadn't done it for a long time. But that opportunity to interact in a normal way is mentally refreshing.
Nick, what about your companies? What's your policy with your companies? Are people coming back to work now? And if so, how are you managing it?
So in Scotland, we split production across, so we put in an evening shift to spread production out, which worked well. And then most of the engineering team and other office staff went from home, but they're mostly on the way back in now. What we kind of realised through the process was we were always very focused on having everybody in and around the factory, and we've recruited probably 2 or 3 people during lockdown who we've now, you know, one's based in Portsmouth, one's based in the Midlands, one's somewhere else, and you know they are engineers, design engineers, and actually it's made us kind of realise that we don't need to have everybody in the office the whole time. And because we do quite a lot of defence work, our customers in the past have, you know, given diktats about, you know, everybody needs to be in a room with a lock on or whatever, but they've actually relaxed some of their rules as well to enable us to do that, which is good.
That's an interesting challenge, actually, because there's a lot of worry about IP. You know, if you're talking about people working in an atomized workforce, they're operating over insecure broadband. They may not have, you know, you may need to put a lot of security into their laptops if they're working on proprietary software, you know, IP for a client or whatever. Has anybody come across that? Is that something that anybody has run up against? No, that's interesting.
Nick.
Sorry.
Yeah, Nick. I mean, for us, obviously, we do both high value IP work and also defence work. But you know, for years we have a very locked down, secure system. So everybody has a you know, IT equipment delivered by the company. It's all security accredited. We're working on VPNs. At a certain security level, you have to go on site to work. You know, the things we're working on at home are reasonably well secured. And it's just, again, it's getting used to that way of working. And I think if you're a small company and you've been used to very agile ways of working using all the cloud-based products, then you've just got to be really careful about exactly where that data is going, because it may be going places you don't know about and your customers don't know about. So it's deciding which bits do you use the cloud for, and which bits do you keep closer to you, so that you know where the data is residing, and you know, have you got the right cybersecurity layers in place for all the needs of your customers?
Yeah, I somebody who was working as a subcontractor for a very, very high-powered company, and they had to get special licenses, indeed, software licenses, in order to allow people to work on the design at home. Ram, you were going to suggest something there.
Yeah, we've had this experience of doing this kind of work when we were doing the work for the European Space Agency via RAL Space in Howell campus. We were all having our own solid edge licenses, but we were linking up to the servers in RAL via VPN. And then the guys in Switzerland, APCO, had the access to the same servers, and Airbus guys in Germany, in fact, Roy, your colleagues in Germany, had access to the same servers when we were doing the work on the Sentinel-4 and Sentinel-5 development of the equipment. So we were pretty much, we had to go through the whole motions of making sure that we had firewalls and what have you on all our individual machines when we were connected to the systems and everything. Yeah, we went through a massive drill when we were doing that.
Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I'm very keen that we should end on time. Anybody got any final thoughts on this? Alec and Fiona, I actually muted you because we were getting a bit of a buzz, but if you've got one, so if you want to add anything, do unmute yourself.
So one of the techniques that I've heard businesses using is having online not forums, but literally the tile screen where they just connect when they're working from home. They can just lift their head up and they can have a conversation and then get back to work. So it's a bit like being in an office, but being in a virtual office where your colleagues are all working on different things, and not even your colleagues, but other people in parts of the business. And there's just people around them. So there's an idea for those who are struggling without that network around them.
Okay. Well, listen, a bit of housekeeping I wanted to attend to, because I'm not very good at detail. I hadn't thought to ask you this in advance, and I haven't put any kind of disclaimer form on the website. But I think part of the joy of what we're doing is that we're all making new friends, renewing old acquaintances as well. Does anybody have any objection if I was to create a forum through which everybody can communicate? Because I know that there'll be some of you keen to chat to others and so on. If you have an objection, you don't have to say it now. Please email me. I won't do it until tomorrow. And also, I might clip some of this and put it out in order to sort of generate some interest in next week's show. So please, if you have any issues, do let me know. Otherwise, I'll put you all in touch tomorrow, find a way of doing it. And hopefully we can catch up again next week. I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you. Lovely to see so many faces. I hope everybody who's been watching this on YouTube Live has had a good time and got some juice out of it. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. I'll see you next week, 6 o'clock Thursday, Kaizen Central. I'm Nick Peters. Goodbye for now.